Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another video. This one's going to be a little bit different. First, it's not in high definition because I'm not capturing the entire desktop. We're only capturing the window that GNOME Boxes is running in. And the other thing that makes this video different is that we're going to concentrate on installing a server today. We're going to take a look at the installation process for Debian 13 Trixie. I set up a server last weekend to replace the original Teensy server. Yes, boys and girls, the original Teensy finally died. We'll tell you about that as we roll along. If you like what you see in this video, give it a like. It helps YouTube get these kind of videos out in front of other people. We're talking like long-form content and stuff like that. And if you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps a great deal. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed recently. We've had a lot of new subscribers, and I'm very glad you're here. The more the merrier. So let's go ahead and jump into getting this thing set up. We're going to be working totally in a terminal today. There is no desktop environment of any kind. And usually on my channel, I focus on desktop Linux, but I had such a lovely experience installing this that I really wanted to show you guys the installer and how it worked, and show you what it was like once I got everything ready to go. So we are going to go to Downloads, ISO, and then we have the Debian 13 Net Installer. You can go get this from Debian.org. I'll put a link in the description. And no matter what kind of Debian you want to install, this is the way to do it, really, honestly. You don't have to download a great big ISO file, just this little one. So we're going to go ahead and open that up. And bring this down here where you guys can see it. Now, I would like to put the name in here, but there's a bug in GNOME Boxes that kind of bugs me. So I'm going to point it out, and that is that if I type anything in here, let's just type in Deb. And then I come down here and look for my operating system. Now, if I want to call it Deb, so I'm going to do a search here for Debian. Watch what it does. It blows out what I typed and put in whatever you choose. Why don't you do that the other way around? Why don't you make it so I choose the operating system, it makes a suggestion, and then I change it. See, it's the order of things. This is above that. So, anyhow. Rant over. So we're going to leave it at 2 gigabytes of RAM. That's plenty. We don't need any more than that. But we are going to have a bigger drive because I'm going to show you partition editing in here. And we're going to do 128 gigabytes. That's plenty for what we're going to do. Move forward. Go ahead and start this thing up. And we're going to choose the non-graphic installer. So the first thing it asks me is my language. And I'm in the United States. We're going to do American English. And it will go off and configure. Not this last week, but the week before last, I decided that Teensy, the little Asus EEEE PC file server that has lived under the end table in the living room by the door next to the couch where the router is for all these years, needed a little love, so I was going to put a upgraded hard drive in there. It had a 500 gigabyte ancient spinning drive, and I wanted to put an SSD in there, and I had a Samsung Evo 860 not doing anything, so I tried to get into the computer and ended up breaking it in half. I took all of the screws out of the bottom, and I was trying to get the clamshell to open up, and apparently there was one in the middle that I had missed, and it just broke in half. I've never seen anything like it. So we'll have a moment of silence now for the original Teensy. Goodbye, Teensy. But I set up Teensy 2, and it became a Debian server, which is how I got the experience of doing this. So the first thing the installer is asking for now, well, not the first thing, of course, is the language, but the first thing that we've got to do is figure out what we're going to call this particular machine, and we're going to call it Debian 13. And now it's asking for a domain name. I'm going to skip it because I don't have one. Could make something up, I suppose. Now it is asking us to provide a password if we want to create an active root account. Debian is very old school Linux, and you can have it where you have a full root account with a password, and then you can decide what users can have administrator privileges by putting them in the sudoers file. So when you first set this up, if I give this a password now, that means that I have an active root account, and the account that I set up for myself, I will have to change users to be root. I will have to switch users. It's a little bit cumbersome if you're not used to it. Also, the old way of doing things is a little bit of a security risk, because if you have an active root account with a password, that means somebody could log in and be root. If it doesn't exist, if it's a locked account, it's a little bit more secure, because then you have to be on the sudoers list to be able to do that, and that is set up at install. So if they get into an account that it's a non-administrative account, then it won't do them any good. They'd have to figure out the passwords and all that other stuff too, so even if they were on an administrator's account. So what we're going to do is set it up that way, because we're used to it in Ubuntu, Linux Mint. I think Manjaro does it that way as well. Many distributions of Linux do not have an active root these days. And the way we're going to do that is just to hit enter. And now it's going to ask for my name. Looks like I typed that right. And it offers the username Joe, which is fine, all lowercase. That's what I have on all my machines. And I appreciate the fact that the Debian folks are keeping things simple. They're not trying to be all cool and like put Joe C or something like that. Nope, Joe is fine. Thank you very much. So now I got to put in my password. I think I did that right. Let me try that again. It didn't feel right, man. Alright, it accepted that. I am in the Eastern time zone, and it needs to go configure a little bit. So the way I ended up setting up this server was, the new one, I used the same computer that I had been using for work for a long time at the radio station. Used it for 6 years. And that machine did not work out well as a desktop. I tried to set that up as a desktop for Cindy to replace her old HP laptop, but it kept crashing. It crashed daily. It would just lock completely up and you couldn't do anything with it. So what I ended up doing was just taking that machine offline and giving her back the laptop, because I was going to scrap it. I figured there was something wrong with it. But after I destroyed the original Teensy, the little netbook, I actually started to miss it. I didn't think I would, because I kept that thing going for all these years as sort of a joke. It was something to make videos about. We did upgrade videos on the channel every time that Ubuntu would come out with a new LTS, so I would upgrade it from there and that sort of thing. And I thought, well, when it's gone, it's gone. But then I realized I was actually getting some use out of it. Let's go ahead and do our disk partitioning. We'll get started on this here, and we're going to do it manually. This disk partitioner is one of the best parts of this installer. By the way, the noise you're hearing in the background is my little dog, Carly. We have inherited a 16-year-old dog, boys and girls, and she's wandering around. It's not quite time for dinner yet, Carly. We'll get there. Go lay down. Hear any weird noises, it's her. She makes funny noises, too. So we're going to choose a hard drive, and we're going to create a new partition table. This machine is running in BIOS mode, which means that we're going to do an old MS-DOS partition table, and it was warning me there that if I do that, I was going to blow out all the data on the drive, but of course there's no data on this drive. So we'll go to free space, and we are going to create a new partition. This will be our root partition, and we're going to use 25 gigabytes. If this had a desktop on it, I would say use like 128 gigabytes in a real installation. But for a server, you don't need it. You don't need it at all. When we get done here, the install is going to be ridiculously small. We're talking like 2 or 3 gigabytes at most. And when I did set up the server, I was sitting in the middle of the living room floor, by the way, and I had power cords running to one side for the monitor and the machine, and I had an Ethernet cable running the other way because, like I said, where this is going to live would be under the table. And so I needed to set it up and get it running and get SSH installed so I could log into it. After that, I could configure it sitting down comfortably in front of my regular machine. All right, let's go forward here. And I put a 128 gigabyte root partition on that server, and I didn't need it at all. We want a primary partition for the front. Yes, it has to be primary to boot. We want it at the beginning of the drive. That looks good. We'll go with all of that. We need to set this as bootable. I don't know whether we have to, but we're going to do it. So it is bootable. And now we're going to move on and do another partition. And this is going to be our home partition. Create a new one. Take the rest of the drive. We want this to be yet another primary partition. Remember, with the old MS-DOS partition table, you only get 4 primaries. So if you want any more than 4, you have to have 3 primaries and a 4th primary that will hold logical partitions. We're just going to do 2 primaries. That'll be fine. And the only thing I want to change here is it's setting aside 5% for ext4. There will be no code executed here. The system does not run here. This partition is only there to store data, so we don't need to set aside 5%. And of course, in the real world, if you had a very large drive at this point that you were working with, 5% would be a lot. So let's go ahead and go in here like so. We'll set that to 0. Usually, like with Ubuntu and anything else that you install, they do not give you this option in the installer, and you have to do it afterwards with Tune2FS. So all of our partitions look good now. We're going to move on. And I like that it automatically figured out that, yes, I want the root partition up front, so the next logical one would be home. But I can change that if I want to. If I want to make a separate boot partition or something like that, I can. And of course, if I was running UEFI, I would have to. But since this is BIOS, I don't. As a matter, I've not set this up with UEFI. If any of you guys have done that, tell me how it goes. Does it create a boot partition automatically and then say, okay, create some more partitions, or do you have to do everything manually? Because remember, we're in an installer here. We don't have any access to a shell, so we can't go and grab like parted, which is what gparted works with. Gparted is the graphical parted program, part-ed partition editor. We can't go get that even in a, at a prompt. So we have to rely on this. Tell me how that works with UEFI. So we're done. All good. And now we're going to, it's telling me that there's no swap space. And it's asking me, do I want to return to the partitioning menu? No. I'm going to create a swap file later. Debian wants to create a swap partition. It will create one that is the same size as whatever memory you have in the machine, up to 8 gigabytes. And after that, if you have 1632 gigabytes, it'll create an 8 gigabyte swap partition, which is rather old school because like Ubuntu these days does not do that. They create a swap file. Of course, Ubuntu doesn't call it a swap file anymore. They call it a swap.img. How foo-foo, Not real happy with Ubuntu, which is the reason why I'm using Debian server. We're going to select that with an arrow. Say yes, we're going to move on. That's great. I like it. So I was sitting there in my living room floor, and I was setting up this server on a nice Sunday morning, and it was really a cool, fun experience to sit there with my coffee. And the installer doesn't offer to set up static IPs, which is fine. I used DHCP with Ethernet, got that up and running, and then I was able to set a static IP address. I'll show you how I did that once we get booted up and I can get logged into the regular server over here. We will not set up a static IP on this virtual machine because Boxes uses that weird virtual bridge to get internet to the machines, and I don't want to fool with it. I kind of miss VirtualBox in that VirtualBox would let you do bridge networking that was set up individually for each machine and made it easy to go out and get an IP address from the router for your VM. But you can't do that too easy in Boxes. Unfortunately, VirtualBox is very unstable right now. I've tried it and it just doesn't run right, so we're going to be using GNOME Boxes for the foreseeable future. I can tell you one thing for sure, setting up a static IP address in Debian server in 2025 is a hell of a lot easier than setting it up in Ubuntu in 2018 when I originally built the first Teensy. And that is because Debian does it old school and it's real easy to understand how to do it, whereas Ubuntu has it where you have to edit a YAML file. Now, if you're used to working with YAML all the time and you understand that format, I bet it's great for you. But if you're not used to working with YAML, the tabs and spaces and all that, sort of like Python, it's got to be just right, that messes you up. It took me forever to get that done in that original machine. Okay, so what are we asking about now? We want to check the installation media. Sure, go ahead. Why not? Do I want to check any more? No. So I'm in the United States. We're going to set up a mirror, and I'm going to choose ftp.us.debian.org. Seems to be a good one. We don't need a proxy, so just hit enter. I really like how Debian is doing things these days, and I like the fact that they're making small, incremental, well thought out changes, whereas I find that a lot of other distributions of Linux make changes to make changes. Ubuntu is getting like that. It's one of the reasons I unfortunately have to say that yes, I'm running Ubuntu 2404 on my machines these days. I got a whole network full of machines and it's working quite well. I like it, but I will not be moving on. I think once that is over, we'll be doing something else. So do we want to participate in the survey to see if Debian, to let Debian know what packages we're using? Why not? Let's go ahead. Little popularity contest thing. That's what that's called on the sub-level. At least it used to be. Now we can figure out what kind of Debian install we're doing here, and this is a little program called TaskCell that's running. It's part of the installer here, but this is also available in Ubuntu. You can install it and do exactly the same thing. You can take a generic install of Ubuntu, and then you can choose the Ubuntu flavors and whatever background services that you want to have and all kinds of stuff. It's great. So we don't need a desktop environment at all, so we're going to use the space bar to unselect it. You can select it if you want to. We could choose GNOME. We could choose XFCE. I did try XFCE with this installer last week, and I enjoyed that. Then, of course, we have pretty much all the popular desktops. GNOME Flashback is where they take modern GNOME and make it look like GNOME 2, kind of, sort of. Mate, of course, is GNOME 2 continued forked. KDE is self-explanatory. Cinnamon is the Mint Project's desktop. We're not going to pick any of them. And there's LXDE and LXQT. You could set up a basic web server here and get a basic set of packages for that instance. And you can set up an SSH server automatically on install. I, of course, chose to do that for my file server, but we're not going to do it here for a virtual machine. So basically, we're just going to have the utilities. So let's roll on with that. And to let it know that we've made all our choices, all you do is hit the tab key, and it chooses continue, and we roll on. I guess it could be said that Debian is the Toyota of Linux these days. Toyota has a reputation for making small incremental changes. They're not the most hip and happening cars, but they're known for being well made and well engineered, right? Debian. When you get older, you start appreciating those Toyotas, boy. You know, when you're young, you want them sports cars, but you kind of look at them Camrys and go, yeah, that's nice. Maybe a Corolla, RAV4, yeah. Debian's kind of doing me the same way these days. I look at it and I go, it just works. I like it. Yeah, no, it's not the most up-to-date, but guess what? It does what it's supposed to do. I ran Debian 6 Linux Mint Debian Edition for almost its entire run until a couple of months ago when I decided to give Ubuntu a whirl, and I was very satisfied with the performance. So when Ubuntu runs out, I'll probably be going to Linux Mint Debian Edition, and the reason why is because what I have found is that just straight Debian is a little awkward for me to work with. I have to do a lot of configuration to get it to do what I want it to do. Whereas Linux Mint takes care of a lot of that, and like they don't include a lot of tools that I like to use where Linux Mint will install them and that kind of thing. Nothing wrong with doing that way, but what Debian does, it's just different than I'm used to. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying it's different. If you're used to it and it works for you, great, no problem. So what do we need to do here? Yes, we want to put it on our primary. It would make sense, wouldn't it? On our primary drive. That's where we've installed the system. That's dev SDA. Go ahead, let's do it. One of the things that I remember about Debian, I don't know whether they've changed it these days, is that when you put a disk in the DVD drive or the Blu-ray drive, CD, whatever, that it's read-only mode. You can't write to it. You have to go in and change that. And I'm not quite sure why they do that. They handle physical optical media a little bit different. And I know a lot of people don't care about that these days, but I do, because I do a lot of musical things and I actually use a lot of physical media. I've got to have me a DVD drive around at least. Mainly to work with CDs. So we are installed, the bootloader is installed, and this is where we would reboot. But what I want to do is force quit. We're going to force a shutdown, and the reason why I'm doing that is so I can make a couple of changes here. See? Oh no, I don't want to start it back up. Let's force quit. Force quit. Let's try that again. Force shutdown. And I want to go in here, and I want to go to Preferences, and I want to take this out. And I want to just take this down to 2. Alright. And now we are going to close that. Open this up. And we're booting in for the first time here. Awesome. I don't know whether those settings will take. Sometimes they don't the first time around, but we can check and see once we get some things installed. So on a server like this, you just type in your name, and now you're in. No desktop. Which is the reason why this video is a little bit different looking, because we're just capturing the GNOME boxes here to just get the console. And I do know the print is a little small, but there's no easy way to fix this. So if you're watching on a low-res device, you might want to pause and wait till you can watch it on a big screen, or just listen. I'll tell you what we're looking at here as we roll along. So we're logged in. Apparently it works. We do not need to do updates because we just pulled it down off the web. And we do need to get a couple of files in here from a server somewhere so I can create a swap partition. I think that's the first thing that we need to do. So what I'm going to do is SSH. Let me cycle the numlock key here to make sure that it works. 192.168.0.1. You have to cycle that key. 2. We're going to go into Teensy server. Yes, I really want to log into that machine. The password is for the server we're logging into. And now we're in there. Welcome to Teensy! So I want to grab a couple of things out of here. Now that we've established our connection, I'm going to go ahead and exit. We know it works. Control L to clear. And I'm going to use SFTP. These are all tools we covered in the last video. This is how you use them in the real world here. So we'll do 192.168.0.12. Password. Okay, I want to get, and I'm going to grab a directory, so we want to do it recursively. I want to get Ben. It got it. And now I want to get a file. So I'm going to get documents, and we're going to go to scripts. And I want the machine called makes, or the script rather called make swap. I wrote a script to do this. Now, I posted a video a couple of weeks ago going through this process one little bit at a time and explaining it. And I took my own advice that I give you guys all the time and say, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're constantly doing something over and over again and it's more than 2 or 3 commands, please take the time to actually go and write a script to make it work. So that's exactly what I've done here, because I've been doing so many installs where I have been creating swap files, playing around with Debian, and that I made a script to do that. I'll show you what's in it and then we'll run it. How's that? So we're going to clear the screen again, and we're going to nano. That is installed by default. Thank you, Debian. And we're going to take a look at that script. So make. Oh, and I got to get out of here. Duh. So we'll just put in bye, or you can put exit. There we go. Now we're at a prompt, and I'm where I need to be. I'm in Debian 13, so this is good. Now, nano, and we're going to make swap. I brought that down. Let's go ahead and open that up. Real short script. It's just the commands that we use to create a swap file. So the first thing that we're doing here is we're setting the environment to exit if there is any kind of an error. Set E. That command will just tell the system if there's an error, stop what you're doing. So we go through the same things we need to do. We need to create the file. We need to set permissions. We need to defragment that file. And we will also need to add an entry to our FS tab, so the system will find it. Like I said, you want details about this, look for the video called Working with Swap Space that I just posted not too long ago. So let's get out of here and run this and let it do its job. So to run a loose script that is not somewhere in the path, we use the period to represent the current directory and a slash and just put the name in, and that way the system knows what we're doing here. So I typed name. Should have been make. Typed what I said. Here we go. And we're going to give it privileges. It has written the file. It is now defragmenting that file. If you look down at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the progress. What we're going to look for here is that we get one chunk for one file. We don't want this spread all over the drive. And yes, you have to do this with swap files, even on an SSD. You do not want there to be a lot of different chunks of the file spread all over the drive, because even on an SSD that will slow down access just a tiny little bit. But remember that we're dealing with virtual memory for swap, so the system is going to be treating this like memory, and any delay will make a difference in performance. Well, it looked like it's done. So let's go ahead and reboot the machine. And if we see swap space, we know we got it. I put in reboot and it just shut down. Well, I got that far. Must have done something right. Alright, so log in. We're in, and to check the swap, we'll just run the free command. See if we're using it. Free! .h. There you go. We got 2 gigabytes of swap and just under 2 gigabytes of memory. That's a perfect combination for this machine. I've noticed that as Debian runs for a while, it actually starts using a little swap space. Just a couple of megabytes, not a whole lot. And so that's why I guess that they're saying it really needs to be there, because the kernel needs that space. And some people will go, well, I have 64 gigabytes of RAM. I don't need swap. Yeah, you do. There are reasons for having swap. Now, a little 2 gigabyte swap file won't hurt nobody. So that's the reason why I set this up. The other advantage of having a swap file is the fact that at any time I can change this. I can turn the swap off, delete the file, make it bigger, make it smaller, whatever. So, good to go on our server here. But we have no software. None. Like, watch this. There's no rsync. No rsync. You have to install it. That's pretty crazy. So the stuff that I usually install would be something like sudo apt install. Let's see, I like htop. I'll show you what that looks like. I like MC in this kind of environment. I also like to have NetTools installed. You need this if you want to have things like ifconfig. And definitely need rsync. That's kind of important for a server to have. And what else? I like ncal to be on my machine so I can have a calendar. They have decided now that that's not shipped by default. What else can we put in here? I guess that's, it's a virtual machine. What else do we need? Here we go. Yes. Please go and get all that stuff and install it. All right. So first let me show you htop. My favorite piece of software for... This is like a task manager, and you can go in here and you can reset priorities on things. You can change the nice level. You can stop processes. You can look at things in trees or individually. It's a very powerful program. Take the time to learn how to use htop. And you see we've got our 2 little cores that are barely doing anything, and we're only using 120 something gigabytes of RAM. Or rather megabytes of RAM. Excuse me. We don't have 120 gigabytes. Let me get out of here. So that's what that looks like. MC is my favorite terminal-based file manager. Very powerful. Great for search and destroy, finding things, moving big chunks of data around. Absolutely a wonderful tool. And somebody had pointed out in the comments not too long ago that this is actually Norton Commander from way back when. It is. I had forgotten that. I knew it, but I'd forgotten it. And I got the biggest kick out of that because it really is. And if you're old enough to remember Norton Commander, you've been around for a while. Still a very cool piece of software here. So F10 should get me out. And it does. It doesn't work in Ubuntu if you do F10 because they've reserved the terminal for something else, or GNOME does it, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know what F10 is supposed to do in a terminal. But it doesn't matter because if I run it like in Ubuntu, let me go over here and open up a terminal real quick. I'll show you. One of the really cool things about that, in case you missed it in my last video, let's open up MC here. A little bit of a different color scheme here. I changed that up a little bit. But I'm going to hit F10. It doesn't exit. But I can use my mouse here. So if I go down here to quit, it works. It's a mouse-driven terminal program if you're running it in a terminal emulator like this. Very cool, huh? So let's jump over to the other machine and talk a little bit about it. I do want to show you why I pulled the bin directory over there, because as soon as the bin directory comes over, all of my little scripts are going to work now. Ooh, let me click on that so I get in there. There we go. All my little scripts are going to work now. And I don't have to type in the whole SSH 192.168 because I have SSH in there. So we're going to exit. No, we're not going to exit. We're going to SSH in. We don't have to exit. We're not there yet. So we're going to exit, or rather enter, Teensy. Forgot to, actually. Yeah, see now that numlock got me again, guys. On GNOME boxes, when you start up a machine, you're sitting here and you see the light on, numlock is on. So you go to use the number pad, you have to cycle it. You have to like turn it off and turn it on before the machine, the virtual machine, figures that out. So let's try that one more time. Yeah, it worked that time. All right, we are in. No, we're not. There we go. And we're now into Teensy. We can take a look around inside this server. One of the things that I wanted to show you was how tiny this really is. So this is all set up. I've put a bunch of data in here. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the disk-free, humanly readable. And you'll notice here that I got 128 gigabytes set aside for the root partition, but the entire thing is 3.2 gigabytes, and that includes a 2 gigabyte swap file. So this is a very, very, very tiny install. Of course, there's more data on the home directory because I've moved a lot of stuff over. So this is what it looks like, the backup stuff here. It's just kind of mirrors what you would see on the main system. So this can be synced up. So I have scripts that I can use to sync that up, so that's pretty cool. And let's see, I did want to show you how super easy it was to do the static IP address. So if I go through history here, I'm sure I can find this because I was just looking at this. We're going to look at right here. So to change this, once you get it up and running and you need to go set your static IP, you look for /etc/network/interfaces. Old school. This is how we do it. We open up that file, and we'll go down here to our Ethernet network, which is going to be moving the cursor down there so you can see right here. The system had auto-configured this for DHCP, so where it says static, it said DHCP. You want to change it to static, you change DHCP right here to static, and then you go down and you tab over these lines. So the first one here is going to be the address that I want, the net mask, the gateway, and the DNS servers. I imagine that if you leave the DNS servers blank, that it will do it automatically, but I'm not 100% sure. If you know, put it in the comments. I, of course, wanted to use Cloudflare, so I put 1.1.1.1 and 1.0.0.1, which is the main and the backup for Cloudflare. All you got to do is do that, and that's it. So we'll get out of here. And I have to be quite honest with you, I didn't know that off the top of my head. It's been a really long time since I set up a static IP like that. And so I had to go online and find out what to do. And I had looked on my main computer. Now, remember, I'm sitting in the middle of the floor in the living room installing stuff in this server. So now I've got a problem. It's like, well, I need to really have that in front of me so I type it in properly and don't make any mistakes, because I couldn't remember the exact order of things. You know how that is. So I just used my phone and took a picture of the screen and then went over there and sat on the floor with my phone and edited the file. You do things like that now and then. So what else is there to talk about here? So once this machine was up and running, I put all the data on it, moved it over the network. It is an Ethernet connection, so it didn't take long at all, and probably about an hour and a half to move 250 gigabytes of data, or whatever it is. Well, we can look and see. So, yeah, it's like, well, yeah, 259 gigabytes moving over the network. So it worked very well. Very quick. The whole process, I did it all on Sunday morning, and then it was done. And I just left the thing up and running. So I went ahead and installed the SmartMon tools on the server, and that's so you can get smart information from your hard drives. The hard drive that is in this machine is the one that we put in it when we built the machine to do the radio show. I didn't do it, but my boss actually did it. And we put in a Samsung Evo 860. Not the same one that I was referring to earlier. This one has been in the machine since I got it and hasn't been taken out. And so this machine was used for nearly 7 years. And we're talking hard use. And I thought maybe that drive was going to be showing its age. So I went ahead and installed the SmartMon tools so I could check that out. That drive is fine. So let's go take a look. I will bring that up for you. That's something different. That's not what we want. Right there. Yep, that's what we want. So smart control, and this has all of the smart data from the drive, and you will notice that it is running fine, and it passed all the tests, and it's got nearly 5,000 hours of uptime, but it's not using any of its reserved clusters, and it's just fine. So yeah, those drives were guaranteed for 5 years, and I can't remember how many the terabyte flops on it, a certain amount, TBA. I don't remember what that was, but I don't think we've exceeded it at this point. But 5 years was the maximum time. Now, if you exceeded the TBA before that, then that would void the warranty. But it seems to be working just fine. All of my SSDs have been surprisingly robust. And I remember 5 or 10 years ago that all of the buzz on the network was, the internet rather, not just calling the internet a network. That's kind of like, never mind. Anyway, the buzz about that is that, oh, you had to watch how many times you wrote to the drives and you couldn't overfill them and they were so fragile. And no. Turned out not to be true. That was all overblown. These things run for a long, long time, and you can write a lot of data to them, and they'll just keep on chugging. Yes, sir. So that's nice to know. So I should get some more time out of this. This is a very old machine. The machine itself is probably 10 years old. And the drive in it, I know, is 7 years old because it was rebuilt at just before I got it to do the show on. And I remember I used that every single day. I did audio production on it. I redid the music library on that machine for the radio station. Recorded the show every day. There was a lot of stuff to have that machine do on a daily basis. So the other thing that I wanted to check to see is to make sure that Debian was trimming the file system automatically. And so I checked to see whether this timer was there. And it is. So they have that set up in systemd that once a week it'll go out and trim any file systems running on SSDs. And that's basically just telling the SSD that there aren't any reserved blocks from deleted files. Tells it how much space it has to work with, and then it does all kinds of cool stuff in the background called wear leveling and moves things around. And this doesn't have anything to do with the file system format. This is way down in the guts of the drive controller. So with an SSD, you want to trim it once a week and dump any unused sectors or clusters or whatever they call it so that the drive knows what it's working with. Best solution is to do that once a week. It used to be that you would put discard in your FS tab file, and these days they don't do that. Just run it the FS trim once a week and it's fine. So it's a compromise, because if you have discard in all the time, then it actually works the drive harder than it needs to be worked. And so let's go ahead and exit. I want to go ahead and exit here because I want to show you. We get back to the main machine we were working on here. I want to take a look at the FS tab file, because you may recall that in our script, the script called make swap, we have this command down here that automatically appends to the end of the FS tab file the string that we need to mount the swap file. Once again, go watch that video working with swap if you're confused here. So I wanted to check out my swap file and see how it does that, because that's actually the first time in production that I've actually run that script. So you saw the first run of it in this here video. Dun, da, da, da. All right, so we want to I just want to look at it. So nano etc fs tab. Oh, it did good. I pinned it right there. And I know I've said this before, but we're just calling the file. You could use a UUID, because when the system sets it up, it sets it with a UUID. But since we have already mounted the root file system on this line up here, then it's going to know where to look for it. So assuming that the root file system is mounted successfully, then we can mount the swap. If the root file system does not mount successfully, we have a big problem. So anyhow, thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I know it's a little bit different from the things that I usually do on this channel, but man, this is such a cool, super easy to use server setup. The sky's the limit on what you could do with this. If you want to play with Debian 13, knock yourself out. Install it in a virtual machine. Install it on some junk. Have fun with it. That's the thing to do. Now, if you've been hearing my little dog in the background, she's whimpering because it's dinner time and I need to stop recording videos and go feed her. I need to make myself some dinner too. We'll do it again soon. Thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to your comments and suggestions. Tell me what you want to see in next week's video. Till then, bye.